Cool. So what we're going to get started with now is we're going to go through the blogging app homework that was assigned on Tuesday night, yesterday, for homework. And I'm going to walk through it. Again, not looking at any sort of solution code. I'm going to do it piece by piece. At some points, I'm going to ask you, the class, for guidance and advice. And so, you'll be able to kind of jump in on that. Sometimes I'll ask you, like, oh, which way should I go next? What should I do here? So it's collaborative. Feel free to jump in. Cool. Let's get to it. Can everyone see my screen? No worries, Aaron. I understand. This is after class. This is not expected time for anyone to be here. So no worries. Cool. So we're going to go through the process of actually building the blog right now. I'm going to start by reading through the README because that's the kind of entry point for this. So skipping the setup instructions, assuming I've pulled from upstream correctly, we're building a blogging application. So what's a blogging application? Well, it's a thing that lets me write out text. So I guess you could almost say that something like Twitter is a blogging application, or Facebook, but Blogger is sort of the standard one. Or something like a live journal, if anyone remembers live journal. Ooh, I don't actually want to start a blog though. Let's actually pull up development blogs. Blogs are some really great places to find out cool tips and tricks, find resources to read, etc. So let's take, I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Let's take Web Resources Depot. Oh, that's not an actual link? Oh. Or dailyjs.com. Daily.js, JavaScript for every day, every time, every day, JavaScript forever. So it looks like we have a list here. In this case, it's kind of an infinite scroll of posts, but sometimes you have more of a menu where you can look at one particular post at any moment in time. So let's take a look at the description. When a user clicks on the New Post button, okay, so there's going to be a button that's called New Post or something like that, it shows a form for creating a new blog post on the page. Okay, that makes sense. When a user fills out the form, when a user fills out the form and clicks Create Post, a new blog post is added to the list of posts in memory. Okay, so that's a little bit like what we were doing with laps before. That kind of, to me, says that we're going to have an array storing data, probably objects, and that's going to be handled by the data piece of our application. The title for the new post appears on the list of posts, along with the timestamp of when the post was created. When one of the posts in the list of posts is double-clicked, title, the timestamp, and the content of that post will appear as the main content of a page. So when you click it, I guess it'll show that particular post as the post that you're looking at. At least I think it is. I'm not sure. But I'm going to work off of that assumption, and maybe I'll ask some questions of folks and see if I'm thinking along things in the right lines. Might be even a good idea to do that before I get started. But since this is a video demonstration, I'm not going to do that right now. So let's just go ahead with that idea of things. Architecture is similar to Stopwatch, but not quite the same. Everything centers around the idea of a post object, which has the following structure: title, body, created at, post ID. Post objects are created and managed by an object called app. App is a model for the underlying application of managing posts. It allows you to retrieve existing posts and create new posts. Okay, so I think app is going to be kind of our managing data piece of the operation. That's what app is going to do. And since we mentioned that there's probably going to be an array of posts somewhere, my bet is that it's attached to app. Every time app creates a new post, it gives that post a post ID value that is unique. Interesting. That way, even if you have two posts with the same subject, you won't get them confused. The mechanism it uses to ensure this is a basic one. It assigns the first post post ID of 1, assigns the second one an ID of 2, and so on. As a random factoid and aside, this is also the same mechanism that databases use to ensure that their IDs are unique. Fun stuff. We'll see more about databases later. So we have app and we have UI. So UI is going to be responsible for managing user interface. With stopwatch, that was kind of managed by two separate objects, display and event handlers. But it looks like based on whatever decision that the team was thinking about at this point, they decided that it's going to be one central object for managing all aspects of user interaction, whether that's collecting info from users, dealing with events that happen on the page, or showing stuff back in the DOM. Okay, when UI shows a post on the posts list, that's the list of every post, it gives it the following HTML. So for any given post, it's going to say, okay, so it's going to have a list item. I assume this is that post's ID, and probably the title of the post, and I guess when the post was created. What are posts? Oh, okay. So the properties of a post are that it has a title, has a body. Oh, see, there it is. My interesting day. My interesting day. Date, September 6th. Well, it says it's a date object. What's a date object? Well, I'll look that up later. And post ID 23, post ID 23. Cool. So it looks like each one of the properties that's here in the HTML maps to a property that's on this object. So that's something showing up on the list of posts. When we're displaying a post, we do so inside the article element with the ID post view. So this should be the content of that article when we're looking at a particular post. You should see a header with the title, the date, the body of the post, paragraphs, interesting, and section, and then article. Okay. So it says detailed specifications can be found inside the spec directory. So that's kind of it for the top level directions. I'm going to jump into the spec directory before I move on. All right. It looks like app spec is pretty short. I think there's only 3 methods for app. It looks like there's one called create post, one called get post by ID, and one called get all posts. So create post says it takes a new object containing the properties of a new post, and it adds a new date object as a property called created app. It assigns this new post a unique value for post ID. It adds the new post to the list of posts, and it returns the new post. So the list of posts, I'm assuming, refers to, because we're talking about app here, so it's not really talking about UI so much. I'm assuming that it refers to the array of posts that we talked about earlier. And then it updates the value of new post ID to ensure that IDs are unique. Okay? Get post by ID. It returns the post whose post ID property matches the post ID argument. That seems pretty straightforward based on the name. If no post matches, it returns undefined, or it doesn't return anything, since that's the easiest way to return undefined. Get all posts. It returns an array containing all posts. Oh, well, that's probably going to return that array that I was talking about earlier, an array of posts that live somewhere in our application. If no posts exist, it returns an empty array. Okay. Now the UI spec. This one's a bit more involved. So there's some kind of complex-ish UI things, even if the application is fairly simple at the bottom level. Build post snippet HTML. Given a post, it should return HTML, matching the pattern given in the README, interpolating post ID here, title here. So we're going to be inserting data from a post into some HTML. It looks like build full post HTML probably works the same way. Given a post, it should return HTML matching the pattern given in the README. Those patterns were this and this. Okay, so I guess post snippet HTML is this one. It's kind of like a tiny little piece of the post. And full post HTML is, I'm guessing, the more detailed one. Okay, I'm going to come back to these. DOM reading methods. Oh, so these methods are for reading data from the DOM. Cool, good to know. Get form data. Doesn't take any arguments. It creates a new object, pulls the value from the title input and adds it to the new object as a property called title, pulls the value from the body input and adds the new object as a property called body, and then returns the new object. Okay, I think I understand what that's asking me to do. I'm going to want to create an object. I'm going to want to pull some information from the DOM and add it to that object, and then I want to return the object. Okay, so that's what I have for reading from the DOM. It looks like I also have a bunch of methods for writing to the DOM, changing what's shown in the DOM. So it looks like there's a method here called clear form, and it says it sets the value of each input element inside the form to null. I guess this is something it's going to run after we submit the form, so that the old values that we put in don't stay there. We're going to want to just flush the form out so that we can put new data in. Okay. Set main post to post ID. If it can retrieve the post with matching ID from app, okay, so we're going to be calling app in this method. It creates HTML to display that particular post in detail. And it replaces the content of the show post view element with this new HTML. If it cannot retrieve a post with a given post ID from app, it sets show post view to be empty. Okay, so it looks like this method is going to involve going back to the app object and taking a look at the data that exists in our application. And then based on that data, making some kind of a decision about showing some stuff. Either we show some data or we make this element empty. Okay. Update posts list. Retrieves a list of all posts, generates a snippet for each post, adds all the HTML snippets to post list, arranged with most recent posts on top. So it's going to be the newer stuff on top. And it adds on-post click snippet to each HTML snippet as a click handler. All right, this kind of reminds me of something that we did with stopwatch with laps. You know, we had that array of laps, and we were writing HTML for each one of those laps, and then you know, we were putting them in the DOM. It looks like one difference is that we're also adding a click handler to each one of those list items. Show view. Okay. That name is kind of vague. I'm not sure I understand what this one means. It says, if name is new post, it makes new post view visible. It makes show post view invisible. If name is show post, it tells the UI to set the post specified by post ID. Oh, so there's a second argument called post ID, okay, as the main post. Oh, that reminds me of, okay, set main post to post ID. So we're probably going to be calling this method from show view. Okay, so if name is show post, set the post specified here as the main post, make show post view visible, and make show new post view invisible. So we're doing some like hiding and showing of things on the page. If we look at our HTML, it looks like these two articles are next to each other and both inside the main element. At any given moment in time, if show view is to be believed, only one of these is going to be visible. So I think the purpose of show view is actually to switch which one of these two articles we see. And last, we come down to the event handlers. On click new post, it makes new post view visible. It makes show post view invisible. Okay, so click new post. I think that this is probably the button we saw in the HTML. There's a button called new post. So I think that's what this is talking about. When we want to create a new post, we click this button. And when we do, it makes new post view visible and show post view invisible. Okay, straightforward. On click create post. All right, it prevents the page from reloading. They've specified here that event is going to be an argument. And preventing stuff from reloading, that reminds me of what we did in class the other day, prevent default. Something about the way the forms worked, if I remember correctly. It reads data from the form and creates a new post. All right, so reading data from the form sounds like something that we saw before. In fact, it sounds like get form data. So that method is going to probably call get form data. And then it says it creates a new post. Well, creating a new post, that was in app spec. App, create post. So there's a good chance, I think, that we're going to probably call create post from that method too. Okay, so reading through that again, it says it retrieves data from the form and creates a new post. So it's going to grab data from the DOM, and it's going to call app and make a new post. And it says it updates post list, update post list. Wait, we had a method called update post lists. Okay, cool. So updates post list to include a snippet for the new post. Okay, so basically what this is saying is on click create post, when this function is called, we read data from a form, we add data to the application, and then we show stuff in the DOM in that order. Then, oh, it clears the form. Well, we did clear form. That was another one of those methods. Clear form, right there. Okay, so after we do all that, we call clear form. And then it says it displays the new post inside show post view. All right, well, if it's showing something new in the DOM, it's probably one of these DOM editing methods. It could be show view, or maybe it's set main post, I don't know. But something like that, something to actually change something in the DOM. And the last one is on-click post snippet. It finds the post that the clicked snippet corresponds to. So I guess what this is, I think what this is saying is that when we have a post shown in the DOM, we're looking at some HTML. That's not actually the post itself. But when we click this, it says on-click post snippet. When we click it, I think we need to go and actually find that post from the data that's stored in the application. And then it says, once you get the post, display that post inside show post view. Okay, so in this case, we click on post snippet, and it shows the post that we clicked inside this show post view article. And if we go actually back to the feature spec, that kind of ties into some of the stuff that was listed here. When a user fills out the form and clicks create post, a new blog post is added to the list of posts in memory. The title for the new post appears on the list of posts along with a timestamp. So this kind of sounds like the snippet, actually. And then when one of the posts in the list of posts is double-clicked, title appears on the top of the main content section timestamp appears, the content appears. And this kind of sounds like what was going on in that last one, on click post snippet. Find a post, any given post from the list, you double click it, and you show it in the DOM. Okay, I think that corresponds to that feature. Okay, I've done a lot of reading. I think I have a rough idea of how the application should work at a high level. If I were to like draw a picture maybe of all the different pieces of the application and how they interact with each other, that might be something I can do. I'm going to pause here for a second before I actually start coding. What did you think about the process that we went through so far? Just reading through the spec in the README and reading through the individual specs in the specs directory, or spec directory, rather. You guys have any thoughts on that?
It was very descriptive. Of the steps that we had to do.
Yeah. There were some parts that were maybe a little unclear, but maybe some of that stuff will become more clear as we start working on it. We could start with what we know in any case, get that working, and then move on to things that we don't fully understand, fully grok yet. Sorry, that's not a real word. It's kind of a word, grok. Some people say that to mean understand. Understand is a real word. Okay. Well, I've started by reading all of that stuff. I read through it. I haven't written a single line of code yet. I was just reading through the spec that was given in the README and reading through the individual specs, the unit specs given in the spec directory. I think my next step is figuring out where I want to write code. Like the previous example, I don't think there's really any new HTML that I need to be writing. This looks pretty complete. And hey, actually, it looks like I've got jQuery already loaded. So I should be able to use jQuery to do all of my DOM manipulation stuff. Of course, I don't have to. I never have to use jQuery, but if I want to, it looks like that's available. And it's loading before my homework. So I should be able to reference it from homework.js. And, oh, I didn't copy the CSS file. Doot. Well, okay. It's going to look like crap because the CSS file isn't there. Let me fix that. Just 1 second. I'm going to pause the video. All right, should be good to go. I've got the CSS file now. So that's in there, and I'm going to share my screen again. Nice. Okay, so I've got Chrome at the ready. Nice. So let's go ahead and get started. I mean, I think I have a couple of different options. Oh, crap, did I not move the... Grah. Okay, I'll do this with Bash. Nice. Oh, except I forgot where I was. Okay. Cool. Here's the starting file for homework.js. I've got that here. Oh, actually, it looks like some stuff has already been done for me in terms of setting event handlers anyway. New post view hide. So I guess it's going to hide new post view. That's this thing, this article. It's going to hide that when the page loads. And it's going to show post view, but that's empty. It's going to set a click handler on new post, which is that button, and it's going to call on click new post. Oh, that seems reasonable. Okay. One second, am I recording again? Yes, I am. Okay, sorry, just double checking. Okay, so that seems reasonable. When we click new post, we're going to call on click new post. It's also, this was done with jQuery. So we might do that. We might use jQuery to go ahead and do this. We could use just the JS DOM stuff too, though. But it might be faster to use jQuery. Let's see how it goes. We don't need to decide right away. Or we don't need to decide permanently either. We could always go back and change it. Okay, so it looks like here are our different methods. We got 3 methods on app, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Did I count that right? 3, 4, 1, 2. So 3, 3, 4, that's 10. Yep, so 10 methods on UI and 3 methods on app. I could break this out a couple of different ways. App is pretty big. So if I start working with app, I think I would want to start working with a piece. I mean, rather not app, UI. UI is a pretty big object. It's got all those 10 different methods on it. But fortunately, they are broken up into categories, right? These 2 relate to building HTML. This one relates to reading from the DOM. These 4 relate to writing to the DOM. And these 3 are event handlers. So if I decided to start with UI, I would want to start with one of those groups. That way I can focus on just one small piece of the puzzle to begin with. Trying to solve the entire thing all at once is just going to end up with me sad and angry and throwing my computer against the wall. And nobody wants that. So let's pick something small to work on. I think we could work on really any of these groups. We could work on building HTML. We could work on form data. We could work on writing to the DOM, handling events, or we could work on app. So I'll write those in Slack, and you guys can decide which one you want us to work on first. So go ahead and give a thumbs up on whichever one of those you think that we ought to start with. We could reasonably start from any of them. You can pick one to start and work your way through. Even if it depends on a lot of other stuff, you can fake it. That's an important idea. All right, so I have 2 votes for event handling and 1 vote for app. How many do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I count 7, but I only see 3. So I think you guys are the only ones who have votes that count. Sorry. If anyone else, wants to vote, please feel free. Okay, I see 4 votes. All right, so it's 3 for event handling, 1 for app. So I think folks want to start there. That's fine. Let's start with event handling. No reason not to. We can start anywhere. We have so much freedom, too much freedom. Okay, so let's start with that. We've got homework.js over here, and it's part of UI spec. So I'm going to pull up the UI spec over here on the right, and now I can kind of look at these side by side. So here's my event handlers. On click new post, it makes new post view visible. It makes show post view invisible. Okay, that seems fairly straightforward. You guys know how to make stuff visible or invisible? How do I do that? How do I make things visible or invisible? How do I do it with just pure vanilla JavaScript, first of all? And then secondly, how might I do it with jQuery if I chose to use jQuery instead? Go ahead and type that into Slack.
It was hide and dot show.
Yeah, that's true. That's a very convenient way of doing that. It's something that jQuery provides. If we use the DOM, like the pure just JavaScript DOM on our own, we need to write something a little bit longer. We would need to say document dot query selector new post view dot style dot display equals none. And of course, we'd have to remember that the property was called display and that we could set it to none. That's about twice as long and a little bit less semantic too. Maybe an argument for the jQuery one in this case. Okay, well, we have the option. We don't ever have to use jQuery, but we can because it's been made available to us. So let's try doing that with jQuery. So it says makes new post view visible, makes show post view invisible. So I'm going to copy that. On click new post. Makes it visible, so I'm going to say show. Okay. It makes show post view invisible. I will say hide. Okay. I think that covers it. Let's test it out. Oh. CD into blog. Duh. All right, so here's our page for the blog. Kind of looks ugly. That's okay. We don't look down on ugly pages. So we've got that up. And our new post button, the one that we just wrote this handler for, that's this. According to HTML anyway. HTML says there's a button with ID new post called, says create a new post. I think that's that. And then in our JavaScript, it says that that button has on click new post as its handler. So I think that's what we're referring to. So clicking this button, A, ought to trigger that handler, and B, ought to do some stuff. Let's test first of all whether it actually calls the handler. We don't really need to do this because that piece was provided for us, and generally, well, no, you can't actually trust it. It's usually good to verify, but all right, so refresh. Hey, cool. So our console.log says, yes, the handler is correctly connected to the button. So we verified that much. All right, now let's unhide this, or uncomment this, I should say, not unhide. And refresh and try again. Oh, holy crap, some stuff just happened. That's awesome. It looks like when we showed new post view, that form that we had in the HTML was hidden from the start. But actually, when we say show, it appears and all of this stuff comes up. You can see it in the page. Neato. All righty. So we have more event handlers to write. We should actually check to see whether or not the show post view is actually hidden. I mean, we can't see it, but we couldn't see it before because it was empty. So let's actually take a look inside elements. That way we can just explore the DOM. We look inside main. We see show post view has the property display none. So that'll mean that it's not visible. Okay. I feel satisfied that this one works. All right, next event handler.
Wait, hey,
Yep.
how did you get the show post view hide to have display none? Because for me, I had both of those, the show and hide, and I had to just uncomment out the hide because otherwise, you know, I would never be able to write it, like create the post because it would automatically hide.
Wait, say that again?
Okay, so you have both of those, you have the show and hide both visible, And in mine, I had to comment out the hide part because because when I would click create a new post, nothing would happen because it was hidden.
But new post view is the one that should show. This one is not the one that's got the form.
Oh, I have show post. I have new post view as hide. Okay.
Yeah, if you have those reversed, that might explain it.
Yeah, okay. Never mind.
No worries. Okay. So onClick new post does those two things. Cool. OnClick create post takes an event as an argument. That might be a hint of some kind. It prevents the page from reloading. All right. Now, this one requires a little bit of external knowledge, I will admit. But if you guys remember when we covered forms, you remember how when you would submit a form, it would reload the page? There's a reason for that, a good reason actually, which is that if you're dealing with applications where you're sending data to something, you're going to want to clear the form and get a new page once you're done. Yes, exactly right, Zarella. So we'll start that out with event.preventDefault. We don't need to do this every time that we click, but we do need to do it every time it's a submit event. So you guys haven't learned about this yet, but as you experiment and explore, you will learn more. But there's more than one type of event. There's click events, there's double click events, there's mouse move events, there's all sorts of events that you can have. And there's also one specific type of event called submit. And submit is a very specific type of event that gets created when you have a button inside a form. Even if you don't actually specify it as being a submit button. So to prevent that from happening, we say, hey, form, don't request a new page, right? You don't need to reset everything. We can take care of that with the JavaScript. There's no need to get a whole new set of HTML just to clear out the form fields and submit the data. We're also not sending the data to another computer, so we don't need to worry about that. We're just handling it right here in the browser. So we tell it prevent default. Okay. I think that's what that was called. Is that the ID? Create post. Yep. Clicked create post. Okay. So refresh that page, create a new post. Here's the create post button. So if I click create post, what happens? Oh, cool. So that handler is also wired up correctly. Nice. All right, so let's figure out what actually it's supposed to do. OnClick create post does actually a lot of stuff. It reads data from the form and creates a new post. It updates post list to include a snippet for the new post. It clears the form. It displays the new post. This is a lot of stuff. And actually, a lot of it I don't know that I can necessarily do right now. Okay, I'll admit that's cheating, kind of. But you can do it too. You can cheat too. Getting practice with Atom can save you a lot of time. And multiple curses is honestly God my favorite trick. I love it. Love it to death. Okay. So it prevents the page from reloading. It reads data from the form and creates a new post. It updates post list to include a snippet. Clears the form. It displays the new post inside show post view. I think the only one of these that I know what it does at the moment is it clears the form. clear form, and it doesn't accept any arguments, so I don't need to worry about giving it anything. I think I can just call UI.clearForm. But the rest of this, I'm not sure yet. I mean, these two we've hit, right? We know that it prevents the page from reloading. Shoot. No new line. Okay, so we know that it prevents the page from reloading, reads data from the form, and creates a new post. This sounds complicated. Maybe we save this for later. Updates post list to include a snippet for the new post. Displays the new post inside show post view. All right, so refresh, create a new post. I click create post. Okay, and a whole bunch of stuff prints out. If I were to click create post and I knew how to do all of these things, they would get done. So at least as far as the click handler is concerned, it's more or less set. But we need to figure out exactly how to do these things before we can finish it. That's okay. We'll come back to it. On-click post snippet. It finds the post that the clicked snippet corresponds to. It displays that post inside show post view. Now, this one hasn't been set yet. It's not one of the initial event handlers. Based on the name, on-click post snippet, my hunch is that it's what happens when we actually click one of the names of like the abbreviated HTML things on the list. We mentioned in the feature spec when one of the posts in a list of posts is double-clicked. So on-click post snippet. Maybe that should be on double-click post snippet to be more accurate, but that's fine. So I'm guessing that this is the click handler that's going to get attached to each one of the posts in the list of posts. Okay. So on-click post snippet. When this is going to get called is when we have a post snippet that we're calling it on. At the moment, we don't have any of those. So it kind of constrains our ability to test this out. But that's okay, because we can leave placeholders for ourselves in the meantime. Cool. So I've got those in there, and those should run at the appointed time. But I can't really attach it to anything right now because those elements don't exist yet. I could hard code it, though. That might be a way to actually test whether or not this works. Why don't we try that, actually, rather than moving on? We could hard code some HTML, or we could just add it from here, actually, add it from the console. We can add some HTML to the page and then add that click handler to the new HTML. We have an example of what one of the list items looks like. So let's add this manually. Posts list. Oh, that should be a string. Doesn't like it. Probably because it's not all in one line. Cool. All right, so we just wrote that HTML into the page, and actually, there it is. It showed up. All the right content. It looks like a thing. Okay. So what we want is we want this to get fired when that happens, or when we double click on this. I'm going to try and grab that specific element. At the moment, there's only one. And I'm going to put it into a variable. Cool. So there's the LI that I added to the DOM. I want to give this LI, this post snippet, an event handler, specifically a thing that will register a double click. If I were to use vanilla JS, I think it's on dbl click is the property. I know that with jQuery, it's it works like this. You would say on dbl click for a double click. And we'd want that to be grabbing onClick UI.onClick post snippet. Okay, let's try that. So onClick post snippet, it should print two things every time that we double click the post snippet. So let's see what happens when I double click it. Did the thing happen? No. Why did nothing happen? Can I see UI? Yes, I can see UI. Can I see UI dot on click post snippet? Yes, I can. In fact, it's auto-completing it for me. So I know that it's able to find the function. So I guess there must be something else that's off with my syntax. Could someone check to see if this is correct? If it's dbl click for double click? Or I can do it, but you know, whatever. Well, I'll just check. All right, so there's a dbl click method on dbl click. Oh, lowercase c. Lowercase c. So because of that, it got confused. No problem. Instead of double click with a capital C, it's not camel case, it's just all lowercase. All right, let's try that now. Hey, it worked. We double clicked it and something happened. Cool. All right, so we don't want this to run at startup because there aren't any post snippets at startup, but we are going to want it at some point. So I'm going to add just a comment here and save that syntax. At a certain point, I'm going to want to add that click handler. And when I do, I want to remember how to do it. Okay, I think we're basically done here in terms of event handling. I mean, there's more stuff that we can do. You know, for instance, reads data from the form. I think that's probably get form data. And creates a new post. I think that's probably app.createPost. But those two things also are not themselves completed. So maybe we can go work on those instead. Or at least some of them. Okay, so we worked on event handlers. What do we want to work on next? We still have the app itself. Stop trying to autocomplete Slack. The app itself, HTML builders. we have read from the DOM and write to the DOM. So which of those do you think we should work on next? We can work on any of them. HTML builders is probably the least related out of all of these. It doesn't really depend on anything. App also doesn't depend on much. Read from the DOM. All right, I've got one vote for read from the DOM. Anyone else have other thoughts? Reading and writing. Okay. Between the two, I think I would choose reading from the DOM because it's a lot shorter. There's only one method. So I think I'm going to work on that next. Okay. Reading from the DOM. That's one method, which is get form data. Let's pull up the spec. Get form data. It creates a new object. It pulls the value from the title input, adds it as a property called title. It pulls it from the body input and adds it as a property called body, and it returns the new object. Okay, I think I know how to write that actually. So var new object equals new object. So far, so good. It pulls the value from the title input and sets it as a property called title. So I think I'm going to start this by saying new object dot title equals something. Ditto with the next line. New object dot body equals something. And then it returns the new object. Okay. So I think that's the architecture of this one. I create a new object, I do some stuff to it, and then I ship it, I send it out. So what am I doing to it? I'm pulling the value from the title input, and I'm setting that as the property. So the value from the title input. Okay, so I need to query the DOM in order to get that. I could write document dot query selector. There's a couple different ways that I could actually select that specific input, the one with title. If we look at it in the HTML, there it is. There's that particular input. So it has a name, title. It's also the first input in the form, but it doesn't have an ID or a class or anything. So we could say that it is the, let's see, forms input that might get us that first input. That might be one way to do that. And then we would just get the value property. Value is the value from a form field, the value from an input box. Or we could even select it by its name. We can say input name equals title. That seems, I think, better for our purposes, both because we don't need to use the square braces and because it actually explains to us what it is that we're grabbing just in the text that we're writing. Our code is semantic when we do it this way. Actually, we don't even strictly need the input. We could just say name title. And so it's going to grab whatever it is in the DOM that has the property name title, which means that maybe it's not an input field, maybe it's something else, but you know, we can grab it that way. I don't know. Either way, input is fine. So that's how we could do that with vanilla.js. With jQuery, that would look like this. Take the selector, .val. .val is the jQuery method that corresponds to the .value property in the DOM. I find that's often the case, that jQuery methods will correspond to underlying properties in the DOM. And there are actually a couple good reasons for that. Using methods is better than accessing properties directly. Here's why. First, if you're using a method to access something, that means that you can run code before or after you access it. Very useful. Two, it means that you can constrain the ways in which something can be accessed. If you have a property that's publicly available, anybody can do whatever they want with it. They can read to it and write to it as much as they feel like. There are some very, very, very advanced ways of constraining that, but they're complicated and nobody does them. So having those be methods to access and manipulate stuff instead of properties is a good pattern, actually. We don't strictly need to do it now because all of our properties on the objects are out in the open. But actually, when we start working with modules, when we get to Node, properties are going to be contained inside a given module. So you won't even be able to access a property on a module directly. You'll have to go through methods. Okay, cool. I'm going to go with the jQuery one. It's shorter. And that's pretty much the only reason. Don't really care otherwise. And for body, I know it's going to be the same. It just has a different name. Right? Its name is postBody. So postbody.val. Okay, cool. So we've got some stuff in here, but how do we actually test something like this? How do we know that our code works? Well, one thing that we could do is, now that we have this get form data, we could create a new post, or let's save this and refresh. If we open the new form, create new post, we can try putting in some data and calling the function and seeing what we get back. So let's call this title my first post. Oops. Yeah. That's not so important. Cool. So I don't even need to click create post. I'm just going to leave these properties right here. I don't know what's going to happen when we click create post. And I don't need to check anyway. I just want to call get form data. So let me call get form data. Say UI.get form data. What do I get back here? Oh, hey, I get an object. And what's more, it's got properties from my form. Sweet. That's really neat. Okay, I think that we've got get form data in the bag. You guys agree? Cool. Close that up. All right, so we've read from the DOM. I'm going to delete that one from the list. So we've got 3 parts left to work on: app itself, HTML building, and writing to the DOM. Zarella cast her vote earlier for writing to the DOM, so I think I'll still count that as a vote for that, unless she actively changes it. You guys want to vote for which one I should work on next? All right, I got 2 for writing for the DOM, 1 for working with the app. Oh no, it's neck and neck. Oh my goodness. Okay, between the 2, I think I want to work on app. And the reason is that, no, actually, no, I won't. App is if I were working on this myself, I would pick app between the 2 to work on, because app doesn't depend on the DOM, but the DOM does depend on app to a certain degree. So I could get app done and not have to worry about anything else. But I want to show you that it's possible to do that even if app isn't done or not ready or doesn't exist yet. You can fake out app. Let's try that. So we're going to work on writing to the DOM now. DOM writing methods. Well, the first one, the easiest one to look at is clear form. Sets the value of each input element inside the form to null. That seems pretty straightforward. All right, so if I were doing this with vanilla.js, I would say var inputs equals document dot query selector input I can't use for each because query selector doesn't return an array, it returns an array-like object. So for var I equals 0, I is less than inputs.length I plus plus. So iterate through, and then for each input, set its value to null. Cool. That would be how we do this with vanilla.js. If we were to do it with jQuery, it's even simpler. This is one of the things that makes jQuery like semi-magical, which is that when you're dealing with a jQuery object, it doesn't actually care how many elements are selected, whether it's 1 or 10. So it will apply whatever it is that you're doing with your method to everything that matches in the selector. Form0.reset. Maybe. I actually don't know the reset method. Is that JS DOM? It would have to be because square 0 is returning a DOM element.
Yeah, I thought it was working when.
Well, let's try it. I mean, we don't need to sit and wonder. Let's give it a test. We've got our form right over here. Paste that in. Form0.reset. Although actually, I might want to type these in. I don't know if any of you guys saw what was going on with Adam Pollock last night, but he ran into an issue where he had copied some fancy quotes from somewhere, and it fucked up his code. Shoot. It messed up his code where because it meant that the character was one that JavaScript didn't recognize. Even though it looked the same to a person, to the computer it looked very different. So one way you can avoid that is by not copying and posting so much and pasting so much. And the other is, if you're nervous about it, type it. Or if it isn't working, try typing it. Okay, so let's see if this works. Form0 reset. Hey, that's pretty cool. So that means that forms just have this method built in. That actually kind of makes sense. I didn't know that. Let me try that with no jQuery involved just to confirm it. Oh, that is nifty. Ooh, I like that. Okay. So actually, but because it's a DOM element, that's why you need the 0. I wonder if jQuery might have a wrapper for it. Reset. Let's see. No, not really. Input selector. Reset selector. No. What was that? Now we want methods though. I don't know if jQuery has it. That is interesting. Well, the jQuery way of doing it is pretty short, so that's not a huge problem. But I really like that because what's different about it is that rather than selecting each input, it actually selects the form, which means that you can select inputs that technically aren't inputs, things like text area. So I like that very much. hybrid. Cool. Oh, shoot, we've been writing this in the wrong place. That should go in clear form. Whoops. Okay, so we've got clear form and we know that it works. Closing it up. Okay. Set main post to post ID. This one seems pretty involved. Looking at the spec, it says if it can retrieve the post with the matching ID from app, it creates HTML to display that particular post in detail. So it kind of depends on app having a list of posts already so that it can search through them. If it can't retrieve the post from given post ID app, it sets show post view to be empty. Okay, the trick for doing this one, for testing this out, is we're going to actually have to put some dummy data into app. But that's okay, we can do that. We know how to do that. We know that a post looks like this. Except we don't know what a date object is. Given the capital D, I think it may be something that exists already. Let me do some Google searching. Oop, date object. The date object is used for work with dates and times. Date objects are created with new date. Okay, cool. So that probably is new date. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab app, right? So we can grab app, we can grab app.posts. It's an empty array. And we'll push some fake data in there. It doesn't have to be real data. We're not so snooty. We'll give it an arbitrary post ID. And we need to give it this created at date object. So we'll say created at new date. Okay, so we push this data into the array. If we look at app.posts, you can actually see that there's something there now. It's this post. It's got some data. Okay, now that we have some data in app, we can actually check that data in our DOM manipulation stuff. So let's come back to homework.js. It says, if it can retrieve the post with the matching ID from app. Now, app actually seems to have a method called getPostID, which we haven't written yet. So let's make a note to ourselves that this is eventually going to have to call getPostById. But in the short term, let's assume that we've got that bit worked out. We've gotten the post by the ID. We have the post. And it is app.posts.find post. Oops. So we're going to go through the posts array and we're going to try and find the post whose ID matches post ID. Or maybe we don't care about that actually. Maybe we're just going to assume that chosen post equals that first post. That actually makes sense. Let's deal with the problem of finding the post later. That's also more the job of app anyway. So let's assume that that's the post that it found. So if that's the post, it says it creates HTML to display that particular post in detail. Crap. Creating HTML sounds like the job of one of these guys. It replaces the content of the show post view element with this new HTML. Okay. So actually, we don't have that function yet either. So we can't turn that post into HTML, but we can fake out the HTML. Because we have an example. Okay, so if that's the HTML that we got, oops. This is what we would actually be calling, but that method isn't built yet. And here we would, I think, probably be calling says set main post. So that sounds like building out like all the details of the post rather than just making a snippet. Oh, shoot, actually that means that this isn't the right HTML to use. That means we want to actually use this one instead. I'm gonna just simplify this by using a template string. Template strings are better at dealing with new lines. Anyway, so this would be the output of, say, calling build post full post HTML on our post. We are assuming that it's built already and that this is the result that we got from it. Fake data. Fake data. So now that we have that, that's kind of like A, right? It creates HTML to display that particular post in detail. It replaces the content of show post view with this new HTML. Well, that's actually not that hard, is it? If that's what we want to do, we can just grab show post view the .html method is the equivalent of inner HTML from JS DOM. Or you could write clear and append. But clearing is important for the reason I mentioned earlier. Like if you delete stuff, your DOM and your data could get out of sync. So you got to remember to like clear the slate. So this does that. But yeah, this is the last step there. It replaces the content of show post view element with this new HTML. If it can't retrieve a post, then it's empty. So I guess this is going to be if post if our target post exists, if we can retrieve the post, do that. Otherwise, we set that HTML to be nothing. Or there's actually a shortcut method in jQuery for this, which is empty. Clear out your inner HTML. But we could easily have just written .html empty string. That would be perfectly valid. Okay. Set main post 2. I think we've got that partially handled for now, but we clearly need to go and finish some other stuff before we can really finish it. update post list. Okay. It retrieves a list of all posts from app. Okay. I think we can do that actually. We don't need to do much. There's a method get all posts that will eventually exist, but for now, we can say app.posts. Eventually, we're going to call that. Okay. And what does it do? It generates an HTML snippet for each post. Okay. So what it's going to do is it's going to iterate through the posts. And for each post, it's going to generate HTML. Now, we, again, have not built those HTML generating functions yet, but that's okay, because we're going to pretend that it is actually returning HTML. We can even use the same fake thing that we were going to use before, because we know that it's going to be an HTML, the posts list. So that means that we're working with the snippets. So let's just take our dummy from the README. Let's assume that they're all like this. So that means for every post, not return actually. For every post, what does it do? It adds all of the HTML snippets to post list. So we could do this one of several ways. We could have post list empty out, and then we could use append for each of these. Actually, we probably would want to use prepend, given that it says that it's most recent on top. Typically with append, you put things progressively on the bottom at the end of something, whereas prepending puts stuff at the beginning. Okay, so we'll prepend each one of these LIs. And and also it says it's going to add on-click snippet to each HTML snippet as a click handler. I think this is where we're going to do that thing that we talked about earlier, setting a click handler for those snippets. Okay, so we could do this each time we create an LI, but actually jQuery gives us a much simpler option, which is that after we've created all of the, oops, this should have an ID. After we've created all of the stuff in post list, after we've created all of that stuff in post list, we can then select all of the list items and apply one click handler to all of them. How do we know that we're getting every element and that we're not getting any duplicates? Because we cleared out the list and filled it with new elements. Okay, now I actually shouldn't have moved this far ahead yet. We know that clearform works, but we actually didn't test set main post to. So let's go ahead and test that before we move on. So all saved? No. Save. Fresh. Create new post. Blah, 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 blah. I'm going to create that fake post. Actually, you know, we don't need to do that because we have fake data already inside set main post 2. So I'm just going to call UI.set main post to some arbitrary number. Doesn't matter because we're not using it. To do the thing? Well, maybe. Set main post to sets the content to show post view. Problem is, that's actually hidden right now because we have the form out. But we can look inside the elements and see whether it's there. No, it's not. Why isn't it there? Let's comment out that if statement. We have some HTML text, and we're adding it to show post view. I believe that's correct. Show post view. Let me try showing it just to be sure. Okay. It's now no longer hidden. That still didn't work, huh? Ah, hey, there we go. Just needed a refresh. So all of that fake data that we had, that's it. It's showing up on the screen as that main post. Neat. Okay, given that, I mean, there's still more stuff that we need. Still more stuff that we need in order for this to work. But we're kind of as far as we can go with it at the moment. I'm going to test the other case, which is where there are no posts. And so app post 0 is going to be undefined. Because if there isn't a post, it just sets it as empty. Let's test it. Ta-da, it's gone. Okay, so yeah, I think we can safely walk away from set main post 2 for now. We're going to have to come back to it because there's still more stuff that needs to be done. But portions of it are done. Portions of it that don't involve calling other methods are done. Okay, back to update post list. So update post list, it sets some stuff for post list. So posts.forEach. So it actually doesn't even look at the posts at all. So I'm just going to fill posts with like a whole bunch of numbers. It doesn't matter. That's too many. 5. All right, so it doesn't actually care what the values of those posts are at the moment. It just cares how many there are, because for each one of those posts, it's going to add some new HTML. So let's call UI.update posts list. Oh, hey, 5 new snippets. Neato. It's a little compressed, small window. But yeah, so we created those 5 HTML snippets in response to each post. Now, what we don't have is an ability to take a post, you know, the properties of a post, and turn it into an HTML, a bit of HTML. That's not what this does, but it is what this is going to do. These are our HTML builder functions. They're going to create strings of HTML code given data, kind of like Mad Libs. Okay, I'm going to close off update post list. Show view. This one is actually, I think, more straightforward than a lot of the others. If name is new post, it shows one thing and hides another thing. If name is show post, it shows the second thing and hides the first thing. that bit I think we can do. Let's try it. All right. If view name is equal to new post, else if view name is equal to show post. Cool. So based on whatever the value is of that input argument is going to be, we're going to show one thing and hide another. So we're going to show this one. And we're going to hide this one. Okay, I think we've fully met this one. That's like, bang, done, actually done. If name is show post, it tells the UI to set the post specified post. Oh, all right, let's come back to that. These two I think we can do. Except this time, this one is hide, and this one is show. Okay, so I think we've banged that out. That will do the thing. Let's save and refresh. Okay, and we'll come over here. So let's try UI.showView new post. Neat. Shows us the form. Now what if we say show post? Oh, form is gone. Now we see whatever the post content is, whatever that might be. Actually, we could fill that with some content using what's it called? Set main post to. So if we call UI dot set main post to 764 or whatever, blah blah blah. Not quite. Oh, we don't have any posts. No? Still no good. Show post view. Something's off here. I think it may have to do with this. Oh, God, JavaScript. Okay, I know exactly what's wrong, and it's that. Because 0 is falsy, just like an empty string is falsy. And so when I say if chosen post, because it's 0, it's not showing anything. Very silly. Okay, let's try this now. There we go. Okay, so the content for that, that article, the show post view, here's that content. You can see right there, that's the stuff that should be in there. If we switch the view to new post, it goes away and the form becomes visible. That's kind of interesting, no? That it allows us, like with a single function, to be able to switch between the different possible layouts of the page, different possible sets of content that the user sees. This is actually a bigger idea called view states, and thinking about like the different screens, essentially, that the user will see when they're interacting with your app. This is an idea that will come up a lot, both on the front end and the back end, actually. The term view is used to refer to each one of these. It's a state of the user interface that you can see. So in this case, either we're in the showing post state, or we're in the new post form state. big idea, I know. Don't worry about understanding this now at all. It's just a thing. It's just a thing. Okay. So I think show view is mostly working. It's doing the thing. The only thing that we're missing is A. It tells the UI to set the post specified by post ID as the main post. Oh, wait a minute. Isn't that what we just did by hand? Setting something as the main post is the job of set main post to. So in the case of show post, we're going to say this dot set main post to post ID. We don't actually care what that post ID is. Whatever it is, that's going to be the main post. And the interesting fallout from this is that when we do this, I'm going to refresh. All right, and add some fake data to the app. So if I do show view new post, it still shows the form, right? But if I do show post 24, that means something semantically, right? It means I want to show post 24. Now, at the moment, we aren't using the number 24 for anything, but eventually, this will mean that we can choose, based on the ID, to set a given post as the main content of this article. You start to see how powerful this is? This is kind of like the end product. All of the little methods in UI build towards show view, because it allows you to switch between either seeing a form or seeing any one of the individual posts in detail. Okay, but we're still dependent on some of this other stuff, and they have their own dependencies. There's not much more that we can do here with writing to the DOM. It's pretty much building HTML and working with the app. Between the two, I'd say work on the app, but either is actually fine. Neither of them really depends on anything else in order to work. And in fact, because of that, they both might be especially good places to start. They don't have any dependencies, so you can just test them. You don't have to wait until something else finishes. How do I know that they don't have any dependencies? Well, I don't strictly, but in this case, it says take a post, turn its data into HTML. I don't think I need anything else in my application in order to do that. It's true for both of these. And as far as the app is concerned, the app, because it's so separated, it doesn't necessarily care about the user interface. It's not concerned with the user interface. It just does its own thing. So this also doesn't have dependencies. Okay, let's go work on app for a little while. We'll take a break from looking at the UI. Okay, app, create post. Actually, no, let's do get all posts. It returns an array containing all posts. If no posts exist, it returns an empty array. Since if no posts exist, that's an empty array, I think we can just return this dot posts. So why have the method? Well, a couple of reasons, actually. If we have, if actually rather than returning this dot post, I did something like this. What do you think that this would do if I were to do that? What does map do? What does map do?
it puts everything into a new array?
Yes. Okay, so why do we care? The reason we care is if we were to write var my data equals app.posts, my data isn't just holding the data from app.posts. It actually refers to app.posts array, which means that if I were to alter my data, then app.posts would also be altered. This has to do with the fact that certain things in JavaScript are passed by reference versus passed by data. Anytime that you have some sort of a data structure that's large, where it can't actually, like, how do I put this? Stop explaining pointers in detail. Things like objects and arrays are passed by reference. Things like functions are passed by reference. And what that means is that the thing that's moving around from variable to variable isn't the data itself. It's not being copied. It's a reference to the underlying data that's being copied. And so all of the different things point back to the same one. So that's kind of dangerous. But if we do map, what's going to happen, it's going to create a new array that is entirely identical to the first array. However, it is not the first array. So if the new array gets changed in any way, those changes won't be reflected in app. There's more than one way to do this. You can do it with slice also. But you guys haven't learned about prototypes yet, so don't worry about this. But having a map that doesn't change anything is an easy way to create a copy of the array. So we're giving out a copy rather than the original. Nice. Okay. Get post by ID. Post ID. It returns a post whose post ID property matches the post ID argument. If no post matches the post ID argument, it returns undefined. Okay. Cool. So in this case, we want to get a particular thing. Fortunately, there's an array method that can actually do this for us. You guys know which one it is? What method do you think it probably would be? What are we trying to do? Think of verbs. What are we trying to do here? We want to get a particular post based on its ID. We want to blank that post.
Find.
Yep. Cool. All right, so we want to find a post for whom what? Whose post ID property matches the post ID argument. I know that, like, you're probably starting to get sick of the word post. I get that. I hear you. There's a reason why I'm avoiding just calling it ID, and it's that other things sometimes use ID, and I want to avoid getting enmeshed in anything else by accident. So I called it post ID. But this will work. And in fact, actually, even if it doesn't find anything, find will return undefined. So it takes care of all of that for us.
Could you also just do an if statement there, like if post.postid equals post ID, return post?
You can, but you'd need to go through every single post first. So you could use an if statement, but it would have to be inside a for loop of some kind or a for each.
Okay.
Yeah, just the if statement alone, you won't know which post you're referring to. But for here, we take the entire collection of posts, we comb through them to find one specific post, find post. And the way that this callback function works is that it gets called once for every single post in the list. And so for any given post, it'll return true if that specific post has an ID equal to the one that was passed in. I guess I could have called this one ID. Anyway, these two work now. How do we know? Well, let's try it. I'm going to save the code. Fresh. App.posts. We don't actually care about what the posts oh, no, that's not true. We do care. But we don't care much. Seems to work. I mean, it should. It's a fairly simple method, right? It's one line, 2 lines. What if we want to get a post by ID? Oh. Okay, we can see that these ones each have different IDs, 1, 2, 3. So let's see what happens if we get 1. Oh, hey, what if we do 2? Sweet. And what about 3? Very nice. What if 4? We don't have one with 4. What are we going to get? Undefined. Okay, so these two methods, done. In the bank. In the flippin' bank. So those are done. What's left? In terms of app, just create post. So let's take a look at create post. It takes a new object containing the properties of a new post, and it adds a new date object. It gives it a post ID. It adds the post to the list of posts and returns the new post. I'm going to let you guys tell me what to do here. What code should go into create post? What's the first thing I should do?
I have post.created at, and then set, and then that equal the new date dot to date string.
Okay. In the README, it says actually to actually keep it as a date object. Not saying that the decision to use it as a date string is wrong, but there might be a reason for it. So I'm going to keep it as the date object rather than calling to date string. But keep that method in your back pocket. Okay, what next?
Post.postid equals app new post ID plus plus.
See, now you're getting fancy. 2 steps in 1. Okay, what next?
Return post.
Skipped a step. I'll end with that, though.
That's because I didn't know how to do the next step.
Well, what is the next step? What's the step that we're missing?
The array.
Something with an array. It's this one. Adds the new post to the list of posts. So what's the list of posts?
Don't know. I just know that we need to push it to app.posts.
Yeah, that's right. That's it exactly. App.posts. Or since we're already on app, we can just say this.posts. Right? Because create post is a method of app. So if we want to refer to app, we can just say this. Same thing. With a few exceptions. All right, so this.post is the post array. .push. Post.
You don't have to put like I had some code commented out where I did post list li last to add it to, you don't have to.
It doesn't say anything about changing the display.
Okay.
I mean, it doesn't specify it. That's not saying that you can't do it, but it's not what they're asking for. And we already have code to add stuff to the display. Update post list. Right? The whole purpose of that thing is to take all of the posts on the list and add it to the DOM. So we don't actually need to do that from app. In fact, we already planned to call app.getAllPosts from within this method. So actually, this UI is going to call app. We don't need app to call UI, which kind of makes sense. App doesn't depend on UI in this example, but UI does depend on app. Okay, app is done. Close that up. All right, cool. So all that's left, well, I mean, we have to finish these. They're not finished yet. They're, partly done, But the ones that we haven't started yet are the HTML builders. And these ones are actually kind of easy if you understand what's being asked for. Let's take a look at the UI spec for those two. Build full post snippet HTML. Given a post, that post, it should return HTML matching the pattern given in the README. Post ID should go as the data post ID. Title should be between the strong tags. Created at, or the date string, the date string based on created at should go between the small tags. Alrighty. So I'm lazy, and I'm just going to copy. Cool. There's my string. And it says I want to interpolate post ID as the data post ID. So if I want to do that using what I know about template strings, I can write that. For now. It says put the title between the strong tags. So I'm guessing this is what they mean. This sounds like a title. Okay, cool. My interesting day. Very interesting. Cool. Next, we have the human readable date string between the small tags. So this is, I'm pretty sure, the date string. Between the small tags. Nice. Okay. Now, this is all well and good, but this is only going to return these specific values. It actually is given a post, right? So rather than giving it the hard-coded values, talking about post ID, title, created at. I mean, these are properties on a post. So let's just pull those properties from the post. As I see it, that seems to be the simplest way to go about it. take its post ID property over there, take its title property over there. And in this case, it says take created at and turn it into a date string. So Rachel, that method that you mentioned earlier, let's bring that to bear now. What was that method? Do you remember it?
The to date.
To date
String.
All right, let's test this. This doesn't really depend on anything other than the post that we pass in. Let's try it out. All right, UI.build post snippet HTML, and I'm going to give it a dummy post object. So it's going to have a post ID of 3, a title of blah, a body of blah blah, and created at, which I'm going to just fill with a new date, because why not? Okay, let's see what we get back. I'm going to test run this method using fake data. Let's see what happens. It didn't do anything. So something's wrong. Let's see. Build that. Post snippet HTML. Post.postID. Post.title. Post.created at. Is it just not doing that? Oh, I know what it is. Forgot to refresh. Didn't include our up-to-date JavaScript. All right, let's try that now. Hey, look at that. We gave it some data, and it generated a brand new piece of HTML as a string. It's not live HTML yet, but it is HTML code written in text. And it's all of the data from our object that we gave it. Fascinating. All right, so given that, let's do full post. I'm gonna start the exact same way. Got a template right here. Okay. All right, so let's go through the requirements on this one. Given a post, it should return HTML matching the pattern given in the README. So title between the H2 tags. All right, I'm just going to copy what I did earlier. Post.title. This is going to be post.created at toDate string. Oh, shoot. Cool. And that checks off A and B, I believe. Now, C is a little tricky. A P tag for each paragraph from body. I'm not sure that I know how to do that. So I won't. I'm going to leave it off for right now. Instead of breaking things up by paragraph, I'll maybe work on that eventually. Not important to work on that now. It's one small feature, and it doesn't really impact anything else. So we'll worry about it later. What am I going to do? I'll pop in the body. And I'll put it inside a P tag. For bodies that are only a paragraph long, this is actually enough. That'll work. When our bodies start to get to be 2 paragraphs or more, we can address that. But for now, let's just leave it with that. Okay. Save, refresh. And I'm going to use the same fake data, but I'm going to call build full post HTML. How do you do? Okay, so our title is in the H2, our date is in the H5, and the content from our body is in the P tags. It's all a string. Now, as a string, that's not enough. We're going to need to add this into our page as HTML. This is a really nice, easy to check kind of thing where we can just see, oh, is the HTML that we're generating looking good? Is that what we should see? Now we know. Okay. So now that we have these two functions done, and I'm considering this one done, we can come back and solve this one at any point. This one's tricky. This is actually, in terms of difficulty, this is one of the toughest to figure out in the homework because it involves understanding how to parse text. And actually, in all honesty, this particular thing, like 1C and build full post HTML, this really should have been a reach feature. So we're going to ignore it. Well, no, leave it. Whatever. Get it later, if we get to it. Okay, so we've got our HTML builders, we've got our app. These ones are completely done, right? They don't depend on anything else. Get form data, that's also completely done. This one doesn't depend on anything else. It's all working. So the ones that we still need to tweak are our writers and our event handlers. Let's get to the event handlers last. All right, so in the DOM writers, we got clear form. We know this one works. It's completed. Closing it. Set main post 2. Okay, we were waiting for get post by ID. We don't have to wait anymore. It's been written. Cool. And we don't need to fake out HTML anymore either. HTML is build full post HTML of chosen post. So that's building our HTML. We can then take that HTML string and add it to the show post view. Okay, pausing for a minute. We know that these work. We know that this one works. We know that the app stuff works. We haven't tested set main post 2 yet. Let's try it out. Save, refresh. All right, so let's give our app a couple posts. A good idea, if you're doing this a lot, is to actually create like standardized fake data so that you don't need to keep typing this stuff in. Makes things a little bit easier. Those things are called fixtures when you do that. So you can have a fixture that you can use or a standardized mock. Title 1. Oh, crap. Evening. Okay. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to write it out in my text file because that was really annoying. And created at all right, and I'm going to create a couple of these. Oh, actually, I didn't think about that. That's not correct. Okay. And that should be body 2. All right, so that's going to be our fake data. We've got it written down, so I don't need to type it by hand anymore. Less likely to make mistakes that way, too. Cool. So we're going to kind of sideload that stuff in, put that into app.posts. Okay. That seems to have worked. All right, let's start tying this all together. We know the IDs for these. So I'm just going to try setting main post to 1. Oh, shoot, I forgot something. Need to actually give it the post ID in order for it to find it. All right, refresh. This .build full post HTML, right? Save, refresh. Okay, cool. So this integrates like 5 different methods that we've written so far. Well, no, it integrates like 3 that we've written so far. Get post ID, get full post HTML, and set main post 2. But set main post 2 seems to work. Let's test it with a couple more pieces of data just to be sure. Oh, hey, 0 doesn't exist. Show nothing. Okay. That one's done. In the bank. Update post list. Okay. Posts is get all posts. Post list is empty. Post list.prepend. Cool. Except that instead of prepending hard-coded HTML, we can use our new HTML generating method. Now, one thing to be wary of is we can't write this here. And the reason for that is that we're not inside update post list. I mean, we are, but we're inside an anonymous function. And so because we're inside an anonymous function, if we were to write this, it would look for something called build post snippet HTML on the global object, and it doesn't exist there. So you'd get an error. Okay, so we take the post for each post, build HTML, and prepend it to post list. All right, that's all well and good. And now if I say update posts list. Oh, right. I just said that and I forgot to change it. That is the error that you will get. You will say this.buildPostSnippet.html is not a function because it isn't. You'll have to say UI here. Now this one you actually could say this, because this is not inside an anonymous function right here. But when you're inside an anonymous function, you cannot use this, or at least you can't use it like that. Know this like that. Okay, so dummy data. We could also actually set this to be inside our JavaScript, like at the bottom of the file, so that after all this is done, it just loads our fake data. I don't care about that. Cool. So now we actually don't even need to keep typing it anymore. All right, so that's save, refresh, and if I say app.posts, it should be preloaded with data, and it is. That makes things much faster. We actually could have done that from the beginning if we wanted, just to have some data to work with, to play around with. App.posts is kind of the core data of this application. It's a list of posts. So filling that with data kind of gives us data to work with all over, which is pretty useful. Anyway, if I call set main post to 3, that works. If I say update post list, I have all my posts, titles and dates. Note how they're in reverse order, most recent on top. That's because we used prepend versus append. Very small thing, but it was specified in the spec. So, you know, whatever. Maybe the designer says, hey, it needs to be in reverse chronological order so that people can see their more recent stuff first, since that's more relevant. And you say, okay, fine, that actually makes sense. And then you implement it. And then you both get a beer. Okay. Update post list in the bank. Close that up. Oh, hey. And this was already done, right? So actually, since we know that set main post 2 works now, show view is done too. If I say UI.show view, show post 2. We know that 2 actually is an ID that exists here. What happens if I say show post 2? Oh, look, now 2 is the main one. If I say 4, now 4 is the main one. And if I pick a number that doesn't exist, it shows nothing. Just as a safety measure. We are done with writing to the DOM. All that's left is event handling. And I'll tell you, that's mostly done too. On-click new post, been finished from the very beginning. On-click post snippet. And on-click create post. Now that we've written all of the other functions, let's see if it's possible to figure out how these work. Reads data from the form and creates a new post. How do you think that we do that? Tell me what to write.
I have var post equals UI get form data.
Okay. Cool. And then what?
App.create post post.
Yep. I would even say, to simplify this,
Okay.
because that thing that you got from the form data, technically that's not really a post. I mean, it sort of is, and it's handy to refer to it that way inside the method, but it's missing a couple of key properties that it's going to get when app creates it. So I think this is better, more semantic. Okay, what's next? This one says updates post list to include a snippet of the new post. What do we need to do? What do I write?
Var snippet equals UI build post snippet HTML.
Nope, simpler than that. It updates post list. Anyone else want to jump in? What method might we call to update the post list?
Update post list.
That sounds like a good bet, yes. And update post list doesn't actually need any data in order to update all the things in the list. And the reason it doesn't need any data is because it gets it from app. Here's the flow of our information. When we create the post, this adds data to app, which this method reads from. So we actually don't need to pass this method any data at all. We just say update post list based on the content of app.posts, which has just been changed. Okay, UI clear form we already have. And here's the last one. Console.log displays the new post inside show post view. So what do we have to do that? What do we do to show a post inside show post view? What's the method for doing that? I know we created it a little while ago.
Show view.
Show view. Yeah, we can do that. I was going to say set main post to, but show view will also work, actually. So this dot show view. In fact, actually, that really is the better one. Show post. Yeah, that is the better one. Nice. Okay, so which post do we show? Show post should get an ID, the ID of the post that you want to show. So which post do we want to show?
The new post.
Okay, so how do we get the ID of the new post? I'll give you a hint.
Just from the variable new post.
app.createPost returns the new post, which is convenient because it means that we can then take that new post and do stuff with it directly rather than having to go through the entire list of posts. That, I mean, you know, that's not necessarily something that you know as a person who's beginning to write this stuff. But in terms of designing these methods, which you guys didn't do, right? You didn't write the specs for what these methods do and how they interact. That was what I did in creating the assignment. But that's not a bad thing to do when you're designing some of this stuff, because that way you can access it without having to make another search. You could also grab last, though. That's also a valid way to do it. We could say app.getAllPosts.slice-1. That would give us the last app. But that assumes that we put it at the end of the array and not at the beginning. This one assumes nothing. It just says whatever we have with the new post, wherever it is, even if we put it in the middle of the array, we're going to return it so that you have it. Okay. Okay, so now that we have this, refresh, create new post. This .get form data is not a function. I have an error somewhere. inside create post. Yes, you do. You do have a method called this.getFormData, but I'll humor you.
Yeah, I had UI there, and I changed it to this, and then when I tried to run it, I was getting errors. I keep getting random errors for different things. Like I just got one for this dot update post list, and I just changed it to UI, and then I didn't get the error again.
Oh, I know why it is. I know why there are errors here, and I know why I had it as UI to begin with. The reason is that this is on-click create post. It's a click handler. When you have a click handler, this doesn't refer to this object. This refers to the object that the handler function gets attached to. That's correct. This is a reference to the DOM element. So we actually have to say UI here because it's a click handler. Because it's a handler function, we can't say this because this will refer to the element that it's attached to. So that's not an issue for on-click new post, but it is one for create post. Very good point. Yeah, this one is actually like that can be a lot of confusion right there. But that's the idea. If you have a handler, as soon as you attach it to an element, this inside the handler will refer to that element. So this no longer refers to UI when we attach it to something. Cool. Now let's try it again. All right. Create post. Cool. Now the reason these didn't show up from the beginning is, I don't know why they didn't show up from the beginning. Oh, because they were preloaded. We didn't go through the process of creating. So actually that may be a flaw in the design of this application. This application assumes that your posts array is empty when you start, but maybe that's not a safe assumption. And maybe an improvement on the application would be to actually show all posts that exist at the very beginning, so that if there are existing posts, you can see them. That might not be a bad idea. In fact, that's such a good idea. I'm going to do that right now. And that should be a period. Cool. Refresh that. See, and now our preloaded data, it shows up there before we've even created a thing. So actually, that's a good decision to do that. Yeah, actually, that's not a bad place for it. Okay, cool. So we only have one method left to define. That's it. We've gotten through everything else in the application. The last thing that we need to do is on-click post snippet. We've already attached it to the elements. The only question is, what do we do once it fires? We can see when we double click on any one of these elements that the click handler is being attached and it is firing. But we haven't specified what the handler does. So now we need to finish that and put it in. So it says on click post snippet, it finds the post that the clicked snippet corresponds to, and it displays that post inside show post view. So how do we do this? Well, how do we display the post? Assuming that we have the post, right? let's take for granted that we have the post, which is some post. Fake data, right? So let's say that that's our post. We found it. Okay, great. How do we display that post inside Show Post View? What do we do? What do we write? Well, what's the thing that shows posts inside Show Post View? What method does that? I know it's late, guys. I know I'm wearing on you.
Show.
Yeah, Show View. And so we say Show View. Oh, not Show View. Excuse me. Blot. Show Post. Excuse me. Sorry, it's late. Okay, great. Which post do we show? We want to show this one. What do we need?
The ID number,
Yep, okay. And how do we get the ID number? Assuming that this is the post we want.
post ID.
Sounds good to me. Okay. Problem solved. Using a little bit of fake data. Let's save that. Fresh. Okay. Double clicking any one of these, they all show up Title 1. But that's because of the fake data that we gave it. We said, make it post 1. Instead of doing that, we want to find the clicked snippet, the post for the clicked snippet. So if I click the snippet that says Title 5, I want to show Title 5 here on the main window. What I need is the ID. How do I get that?
Is that the one from the app.id or something like that?
Well, so the only thing that we have to go on is we're clicking one particular thing. We need to say, based on the one that we clicked, which post does it correspond to?
Would it be like build post snippet HTML post ID? Because that's the snippet that you're clicking.
We don't need to build any new HTML. What we do need to do, though, is get information somehow. Like if I double click Title 3, I wanted to know that I'm referring to the post with ID 3 so that it can show that post over here. How can I get it to know if I double click this specific item that I want to show post 3? Is there anything I can do to help it figure that out? Well, what do we have to go with here? Here's our aside, our list of posts. Let's say that we want to do this one. We want to show this guy. How can we tell which post we want from app? Or just which post ID we need?
With the index number of it? I don't know.
Index number. So you're saying based on its location? The problem with that is that it's going to say the index of this one is 0. But in this case, we want post 5. Do you remember your counters assignment from last week? How did you make sure that when you clicked a counter button, it increased the count of the right value in the array and none of the others. What did you do in that case?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Didn't it have like a special like our spans or like our tags had like an ID or a class or something like that? And when
Yeah,
we work with
they had a data attribute.
okay.
That's the sound I imagine Rachel making. I couldn't hear her, but that was what her face said. Yes, the data attribute. This is a value that we put into the LI. Why did we bother putting it in? So that when we click it, we can figure out what the ID is that we want it to correspond to. Okay, so given that we want this data property, post ID, how do we get it? Knowing only that this function, this click handler is attached to that element. If you have a click handler, how do you refer back to the element you're attached to? Remember,
Will you do something like get the element by the tag, which is the LI, and then just like equals that to the data number or something like that?
no, because you don't know that. You don't know beforehand which one you want to get. You need to figure it out based on which element was clicked.
Don't know that.
Okay. Well, again, if you have an event handler, how do you refer back to the element that you're attached to? Event handlers are properties, therefore, event handlers are properties that hold functions, therefore they are methods. How do you refer back to an object from one of its methods? Come on, guys, you know this one. You know this.
I think my brain's gone to mush. I don't know.
Varkey.
All right.
No.
Well, all I can say is this is something that you're going to get used to, but I think eventually this will become something that you're very familiar with. So what do you think? Is this something that you guys know? Do you guys feel comfortable with this? It's okay. I know, it's late. All right, let's see this sucker work. Oh, we have a problem. What's the problem? Oh, no, it's not. It's post ID. console will log it and make sure that it's getting it correctly. I might have made a mistake. Seem to have made a mistake, right? Happens every so often, all the time. Okay, it printed out the right value, 5. It looks right. There's still one thing that is not quite right. Actually, rather than doing that, no, yeah, that's really going to be the only thing. When you read it, it's coming in as a string. When you read any of the data attributes, they come in as strings, and we want numbers. So all we need to do is that.
Cool.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh, we still have a bug. And I know what the bug is. The bug is that I assigned IDs to the posts, but I didn't start the counter. I started the counter at 1. So this approach is going to need to change at some point. I need a better way of keeping track of what the IDs are. But that's okay. We don't need this anymore. And that's it. We have a working blog app.
Yay.
Cool. Okay, I'm going to stop the recording.